What's going on, everybody? Got a special guest here. We got Jonnie.
How's it going?
What's going on, man? But it's really Jonathan, but he told me that I got to call him Jonnie.
Yeah.
Why is it, man? Why I got to call you Jonnie?
You don't have to, but like I said, my wife calls me Jonathan when she's
That's
mad at me. It's not baby anymore. It's Jonathan. So whenever she says that, I know I'm in trouble. Same thing with my mom when I was growing up.
That's awesome, man. So if I see you like kind of like misbehaving,
I guess.
Jonathan, man.
It doesn't matter to me.
That's awesome, man. Man, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. You shared a little bit about your story on Instagram, and I was like, man, this guy has a beautiful, powerful story. And man, I always tell everyone, you can tell your story 1,000 times. It doesn't matter. It doesn't get boring. It's your story, man. So tell me, man, where do you want to start on this, man?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll start in the beginning for me. I mean, I guess it was I had a great childhood growing up. Grew up here in South Florida in Port St. Lucie, and
so you're originally from Port St. Lucie.
I'm one of those weird people that's from here, and I joke about it with some people. They're like, because everybody's from everywhere else. It seems like. Right. But my parents were from up north, Boston. Is where my mom's from. My dad's from upstate New York. So they were the first ones to come down here, and they grew up in Palm Beach. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, I'm a native, a true native.
That's awesome, man.
Never seen snow before. 38 years old.
Get out of here! You never seen snow
Real
before.
Florida boy. I mean, I've been out of Florida. It's just
okay, but you've never seen snow.
Yeah. I mean, that's stuff you scrape off the wall in the freezer. That's about as close as you get.
Listen, it's fun, but it's not fun to live in.
I'm happy, man. I love it here. I love everything about it. I don't think I'll ever leave.
Wow, man.
Not permanently, anyway.
Yeah. Of course not. Of course not. So you were raised there, Port St. Lucie. So, how was your childhood over there? Because, the only thing I know about Port St. Lucie is the turnpike.
Yeah,
that's the spot to stop, man.
It's
you
a port. They don't even have a port there. But I technically I grew up in Fort Pierce.
Right.
Fort Pierce is known as for a fishing town.
Gotcha.
And for farming, some of the original beef cattle guys from back in the day, original Florida. That was the area where it kind of originated.
A lot of farmland.
Yeah, and I mean it was. I grew up in the city of Fort Pierce. I mean, it was normal, city, smaller town kind of feel. I mean, good old boys part of town, bigger county though, so there was a lot of people still. But I mean, I really didn't have any issues growing up. It was a grew up on a half acre of land in Fort Pierce. Younger brother who has Down syndrome. He was I was 5 when he was born, so there's 5 years difference between me and him. Mm-hmm. Older brother, older sister, 15 and 16 years difference between us. Or maybe it was 14 and 15. I was a whoops child. My dad's a Vietnam vet Marine. My mom's she ended up working for the post office in 86 whenever I was
government
born.
Jobs, all government jobs.
Yep. And Dad hurt his back the year I was born. He was a union iron worker. Built a bunch of Palm Beach condos and stuff and the nuclear power plant. But he hurt his back, and he pretty much became the breadwinner, or the homebody. My mom became the breadwinner, so he raised me, and my little brother whenever he came along 5 years after me. And great, like I said, great childhood. Older brother and older sister already out of the house, so I was kind of like an only child for a while.
Right.
And once my little brother came, a lot of the attention shifted to him, so I kind of got to do whatever I wanted to do pretty much growing up. And my family, everybody in my family smokes weed. Some families they drink, they go to family parties, they drink. Right. My family smokes pot. So that was just the way it was. If you went to a get together, it was like cousins, uncles, aunts, everybody knew that's what happened. And, even if you were at a party where they couldn't smoke weed, you'd see 10 people sneak off somewhere
and just go
and do their thing. But
so that was the common thing that you saw
growing up. Like I said, my older sister had a nephew that was close in age with me. And that's what we all hung out. Family smoked weed, and that was normal. We didn't know there was anything wrong with it.
Right.
And I remember in 3rd grade, I think, in elementary school, we were talking about it in school. I was like, oh, yeah, my dad rolls homemade cigarettes. and they called the house, I guess, because I got home that day. He's like, Johnny, you don't need to be telling people. And this is back before it was like legal. You know, you could get in trouble.
Yeah.
And so that's what we saw. And, you know, obviously that was, I remember sitting at the table and while they were passing joints around when I was a kid, and my uncle tried to hand it to me when I was 5 years old, you know, and I didn't take it, but, you know, it was just, I thought it was normal. Most kids, you know, that you see your family doing something,
Of course.
that's what you're going to think. So it eventually got to the point where me and my nephew, we wanted to try it. So we watched our family do it their whole lives. So we rolled our own joint and we smoked a joint at, like, I want to say I was about 9, he was 8. And that was the opening ceremony of my life, of you know, something that made me feel good, something getting me out of myself. You know, it wasn't like wasn't like this grand session or anything, but it was, you know, we definitely felt something off of it. And you know, it made me feel different.
That's interesting because, you know, some people that start, like, for example, I was sharing my story the other day, and there are certain elements and certain things, situations that took me to start using drugs. And a lot of people use it based on trauma or whatever the case is, right? If you dig deep, you'll find out that, oh, you know what, I started doing drugs because of this and this and that. But in your case, you were imitating a lifestyle that you were surrounded by constantly.
Nobody ever told me it was wrong.
Right.
Nobody, you know, so obviously you grow up, you know what right and wrong is, but nobody ever said, hey, you're not supposed to do that. My dad used to drive me to baseball practice, and you know, he'd smoke joints on the way there. I'd open the van door to get out and go to baseball practice, and you know, there's smoke rolling out. And I never knew it till I got older, and I talked to, like, my friends' parents and stuff, and we, like, my dad was there. He showed up to every game. He brought me to every practice, but they all were like, yeah, your dad, we always smelled like weed, you know? And it was like I don't know if he didn't think people knew or if he just didn't care. I don't know. But dad was a great guy, though. There was nothing, I can't say one bad thing about him.
That's awesome.
You know, other than the fact that he, you know, smoked pot for all those years. And, And
that's another debate. I mean, you know, we can debate about that. You know what? You know, was he a good father? Was he, you know, the best example? And I think, you know, some people need to pull back a little bit and understand. It's like, you know, as an adult now, when I look at my father, there's a lot of mistakes that my father had, you know, made. But now as an adult, as I sit down with him and talk to him, there's a lot of things I didn't know as a kid that he went through.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, doesn't justify what he's done, but I get it. I understand. And a lot of people don't spend the time to get to know the person, to understand their story. It's like, you know, somebody that's been through war, brother.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're talking about. You can judge all you want,
Especially
but you
that
don't
war,
know exactly. You don't know where that person has been through, or did he have someone to educate him or to be that example in his life, you know? So again, it's not to justify what people do, but try to understand that there's always a story behind why they do what they do, you know?
Putting yourself in their shoes.
Yeah, and
know?
that's why I love having these conversations with people, because I have a way of thinking. I was brought a certain way. I made a lot of mistakes, but there's nothing better than talking to somebody and understanding their story.
That's it.
You know, because then there's sympathy. Right? There's
empathy.
Yeah, man.
And yeah, identification.
Exactly. It's easy to talk junk about somebody. Super easy. Oh, that guy did this and this and that. But, bro, did you sit down with that person, have a cup of coffee with that person, get to know that person personally before you judge that person? So, again, I think it's important. And I love that you're sharing that because, again, there's people that they've been influenced in a different way.
100%.
Right? So now, you know, you're a kid. You tried it at 9 years old. I tried it when I was 13. I started when I was 13. So 9 years old is really early. So what happens after that?
It wasn't really the starting point or anything, but it was just definitely probably where the seed was planted.
Sure.
So,
I guarantee the seed was planted way before that.
And I had a personality too, like I said, where I call it starting with sports. I mean, when I was 5 years old, I started playing baseball. You know, my family put me in bowling at a young age. My mom was a big bowler, and I was addicted to sports from a young age. Like
That's awesome.
ate it, slept it, breathed it, opened up in the morning. I would open up baseball magazines and just like, that was my life. So I saw from like a young age of just a personality that if I liked something, I went full bore on it. So no matter what it was, if it made me feel good, some people ask me today, they're like, oh, what was your drug of choice? My drug of choice is more. You know, it didn't matter what it was. If it made me feel good, I wanted more of it. And I still kind of look at that in myself today because of, you know, I try to keep myself in check. Like, am I being prideful in this situation? Am I being egotistical? You know, am I using the platforms in a way to where they're you know, helping instead of coming off a certain way? And so, but I gained all that knowledge, like you said, by sitting down, understanding myself, understanding the people in my past and in my history through working the 12 steps of recovery. And, you know, that was I think if the whole world worked the 12 steps, truly worked the steps and didn't just scratch the surface and dug deep on themselves and figured out why they do what they do and why they did what they did and why their parents were the way they were. And like you said, understanding, like, I never looked at it like that. It was just something that I saw and I thought it was normal. But growing up after that, like, just same thing, man. Normal, awesome, every day. Younger childhood life, riding bicycles with the kids in the neighborhood, playing basketball at the local basketball court down the street at the elementary school. And as I went through school, I had some, you know, they told me I had ADHD. They put me on the medication. Jeez. And, you know, I used that as an excuse. I was very intelligent from a young age where, like, if I got in a fight at school or if I got in trouble, I'd be like, oh, I forgot to take my medicine this morning. And it was almost, and I did, but I still would like use it as like a escape or a way to get out of whatever trouble I was in. And my mom always was right there to rescue me. She's like, well, you know, he's got this, this, and this. She went to every meeting in the school, made sure I sat in certain chairs and like my dad hated it because like I would get in trouble or get suspended. And she'd be like, oh, I got tickets to Disney for you guys since you're home for 3 days. And my dad's like, are you kidding me? The kid just got in trouble. Right. And we're going to Disney to a hotel for 3 days. Yeah. And so mom was definitely always one to stand up for me, one to always be there when, you know, even early in my adult life, whenever I finally got out of the house and stuff, I'd be like, Ma, you know, I can't pay my rent this month. And she'd be there, fill my fridge up with groceries, help me pay my rent. My dad hated it, you know, but she just, you know, I was the second round of kids. So this, you know, the first round, my brother and sister are jealous because they were like, oh, well, we never had that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I see that a lot.
But growing up from there, I mean, I think I really want to say it was about 12 years old whenever I first actually started all my friends' parents smoked weed too in my neighborhood. There was probably 3 or the ones that I hung out with. And I'm not going to say every kid. So we ended up, you know, developing our little clique of kids in our neighborhood that, you know, we would get weed from our parents and we'd go out in the woods and smoke weed. And, you know, it became like a regular thing. And that's when sports started to become less and less interesting. I still played sports, still was really good at it. But, you know, obviously the hanging out with my friends and becoming a pothead at a young age. And so I got in trouble. I got arrested for tried to steal a pair of shoes from Rack Room Shoes in the mall. I went and took my old Reebok Classics in and tried to trade them in for some clean ones. And they watched me in the mirrors the whole time. And I walked out, and my mom was there at the mall. And I didn't get arrested, but I got in trouble. I had to go do like an evaluation or something. And they told me that I had to take a drug test. And I took my friend told me that if you put chlorine tablets in your pee, you could pass a drug test. Wow. So I went in there and I poured like this little bag of chlorine in there and it started foaming. And I went in there and handed it to the lady and she's like, yeah. She's like, if this is your pee, then we need to call an ambulance. Exactly. But so like from a young age, I'm already like trying to manipulate the system, just trying to get over on things and thinking that I was smart, but I really wasn't. And obviously to be in a situation where we're trying to cover it up, the lady seems to think that I have a problem, right? Even at 12 years old, I may not have been addicted to drugs or whatever, but so she puts me in this program where it was, you know, it was like a juvenile intervention program, outpatient program. And I just never stopped smoking weed. I just kept going and failing drug tests. And they ended up, as a term of my probation or that I was on, I ended up going to a level 6 juvenile program.
Wow. So they were just throwing you in the system. Let me ask you something, because I'm curious about this. Now that you're an adult and you analyze yourself a lot, I've been doing that a lot, man. You hit 43, your mind starts thinking differently, and I've been having deep conversations with my wife that I didn't have before.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certain behavior patterns that we take along with us, because there are things that we don't admit to, we don't face, we don't confront, whatever the case is, and we kind of bring it on along with us. Especially things that our parents, right, have enabled.
Yeah.
Right. So when you look, because I remember you were talking about your mom, right? Do you think your mom in some way, do you blame her for some of the things that you started doing, or your behavior patterns and stuff like that? Do you blame her in some way?
Even like now looking back on it, I mean, I guess I don't like justify it for her.
Right.
But I think that a lot of her actions are the reason why I became the way I became. Yeah.
Right.
But she did the best she could, just like we were talking about my dad. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's not justifying their behavior. There's no book or anything that tells you how to be a parent. So
Right.
it's understanding it now that I'm a parent, and my mom always told me, she's like, you're going to wait till you have a son, and
Exactly. Yeah.
my 14-year-old's right there at the
Yeah.
beginning of teenage-ness. And I just know we're in for it. And I don't speak life over it in that way, so it doesn't come to life, because we do have, a great son. And
I think it's important. The reason why I ask, because there's things that I look at, my parents, things that, my mom was, she never educated me, or my dad never educated me in certain things. There were certain disciplines. When I did something wrong, my mom would discipline me, but not abuse. It was more of fear of losing her son, right? But there was never that conversation about certain things. And I think it's because they just didn't know how to deal with it. And I look back at that and I'm like, of course my mom could have did a better job, but she didn't have the information.
Yeah.
Again, it's not to justify, it's not to throw her under the bus.
Well, it's like whatever works, right? And just we think like, all right, this works for now. Let's just do that, because we got all the things in our life going on. We're working, we're trying. She was working 2 jobs. Her way of dealing with me was to either buy me off, or to, she never really took the time to spend with me. Whereas dad was the one that was like, we need to ground them and be on the home front together. And he was pushing for like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Whereas,
and that's tough, because when both, like, for example, my parents, they were spiritual, I grew up in a Christian home.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was a good example when it came to that. The home, we always had fellowship. We always had Bible study. My mom also. So they were very, when it came to those things, they were very united.
Okay.
But it was the way that it was taught that I just never comprehended it. I never understood it. There was never a deep conversation about certain things, right? For your dad, that must have been tough, because I've seen another side. Like, for example, my aunt, wonderful person, but when it came to my cousin, it was always like, he did something wrong. It was, oh, he's my baby and this and that, and just
only child,
and just really protected him, but it didn't really help him.
Hurts. That's what they say.
So
my
much,
mom,
man.
even when during the heart of my addiction, they call it, you love them to death.
Yeah, and they think they think that they're helping, but in reality, you're hurting that person. And I always tell this to
I think
to
it's
people.
a woman thing too.
Yeah,
I think it is, because they have a different heart than a man does.
Yeah, and discipline, and the reason why I say this, because discipline is important, the right way.
Right.
And I always remember those moments when I did something wrong. Bro, my mom, she would run after me. I remember one time she ran after me around the table and stuff like that. And, in South America, you know, you have the slippers and, you know, she'll use
Oh,
that
yeah.
as ninja stars and stuff like that,
Yep.
man. I'm telling you, man. And I remember this one time I stole a bike and she was so pissed at me and she ran after me. She caught me and she was just like, just whipping me up. But as she was whipping me up, she was crying.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that. She was just crying. And I was confused about that. I said, hold up, I'm the one that's supposed to be crying. I'm the one that's getting whipped up, but she was crying. After that, you know, I went into my room, you know, I was punished or whatever. She came after and she just hugged me. She embraced me. For some reason, something clicked at me. I was like, you know what? She really didn't want to do that. I put her in a situation because she was in fear of losing her son. I didn't understand the consequences.
Well, you said the word right before you
Yeah.
started talking about this is
Yeah.
discipline,
Discipline, yeah.
right? When we talk about it in one of my Bible studies, we try to apply this stuff in our life, right? When
Right.
we learn about it. What is the first thing I think about when I think of discipline is like spanking your kid, putting them in the corner, taking something away from them. But the word discipline means to teach.
Absolutely.
So that means that having that conversation is what needs to happen. And I'm the same thing with my son right now, where I was like, I don't know why it is with him. I can be so patient with so many people, but when it comes to my son,
Yeah,
I
it's
want to
tough.
scream at him and I cuss. And
Yeah.
it's something that I've been working on. And I'm like, and I actually had that conversation, sat him down in front of him, like, dude, I'm sorry, man. I'm falling short in this.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do this. You make me very angry and I react out of emotion.
Yeah.
And it's not what I want to do. And I'm going to work on changing it.
Yeah.
And like that 5 minutes turned into 25 minutes of him and I just having just deep conversation.
Yeah.
And that's where I think I was lacking that with my parents.
Yeah. And that's important. The vulnerability, especially when it comes to a man, is important. And I think I don't have kids. I've been with my wife for 26 years and we don't have kids. We're thinking about it now. But I work with a lot of kids. It's one of my ministry is working with kids,
Awesome.
young people and stuff like that. But that is one of the core importance is as a man is being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Is admitting to our weaknesses, our
That's what it means to be a
shortcomings.
real man. The
That's-
world raises us to be masculine and to wipe off your knee when you get hurt and just brush
Right.
it off and keep going. And so that same thing is ingrained in us, you know, as we get older and realistically it stunts our growth. Because you think you're supposed to be a certain way,
Yeah.
and you realize that the worldly way is not the way. That
Right.
to be a real man, it's okay to be sensitive. It's okay to cry.
Right.
It's okay to talk about your feelings.
That's
It's
right.
okay to express that you're hurt and express them. I had to get this paper that had emotions on it. It like sad, happy, confused, and I had to learn what these were growing through my healing process and to be able to like express how I felt because nobody ever taught me that.
Right.
And
some people see it as a sign of weakness.
real men are supposed to pray for their family. They're supposed to
right.
be to make people feel secure in their household. My household is my kingdom, you know. So when God says to
That's your church.
right,
And this is something I always teach my students. You know, whenever we're studying the Bible and everything, is that's where your church starts. Okay, your church doesn't start at a denomination, a church, you know, the building where everyone meets. It starts at home. That is your sanctuary. That is where it starts. So showing your loved ones, especially the people you're working with, especially the young people, your vulnerability, admitting to your shortcomings, that transforms people. The discipline part is so important. And the Bible says that, right? The Bible says that God, he chastens, right? In other words, he disciplines those who he loves. That's powerful. So when I saw that from my mom, I didn't see my mom as an abusive person. As an adult now, it's a different understanding. It's like my mom was not abusing me. I saw love.
she was loving you
Yeah.
the only way she knew how.
Exactly. That's the only way she knew how, because her intentions wasn't to abuse me. Her intentions was to correct a behavior. Now, did it work immediately? Nope. It got worse. But when I saw myself at the lowest point in my life, those teachings, the teachings that my dad gave me, the teachings that my mom gave me, those were the only things I had to grab onto, which saved me.
Okay.
See, sometimes people want instant results.
No, that's not how the
Doesn't
world
work.
works.
But as leaders, as followers of Christ, our mission is to plant seeds. Our
Amen to
mission
that.
is to be a voice, is to teach others. Everyone is going to have their journey, but they need something to grab onto. There's going to be a moment in their lives they're going to be like, you know what? I remember what Jonnie.
That's it.
That's what your son is going to do. Man, I remember that talk I had with my father. Damn.
I said that last night,
Oh,
and
man.
you know, there's key people that God brought into my life. I didn't see it then, but I see it now.
Oh,
where
man,
where
that's
you're
dope.
like, man, I remember what he said,
Mhm.
and this guy told me, he's like, I can never use drugs ever again. I can't.
Right.
Some people are, you know, and I still hold on to that, because every time I'm out at a bar or something, they're like, oh, you want a beer? I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
I tell them a joke. I say, I'm allergic to alcohol. I break out in handcuffs. And I've just been down the road too many times where I might be good today,
Right.
might be good a month from now,
Right.
but it's just going to turn into, what it always has turned into for me.
Yeah, yeah. And that's why you have to work on yourself every day. Humble yourself before the Lord. It's very important, because sometimes we look at ourselves and we see a different appearance, but the characteristics of sinning and wanting to do certain things is still there.
Yeah.
It's still ingrided in there. So you have to work on yourself every
I
day.
think more too, because the more you grow and the more that you find success, however you see success in yourself, you're attacked more. So those are, I think the higher you go, the more you're going to be attacked, because the devil wants to steal, kill, and destroy. So, you have to see those attacks when they come, because, obviously, and through the people you love, through your son or my, I see him getting attacked, and like, I remember standing in the shower the other day, because he was like, I was talking to this kid, he's an atheist at school, and I'm like standing in the shower with like my head down, like, God, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
What do you want from me? Like, and just, humbling myself there in front of him. And
Absolutely.
not that I got the answer right away, but, it was just continuing to show him love, continuing to bring him in. And he's kind of passed through that, I think, now. But I was scared, I didn't know what to do.
Yeah, it is. And that's where we have to connect with God every single day. And a lot of parents, they come to me because, I always share my story, share my experience and everything. And some parents, because I always tell parents, look, you have a certain point with your kids, okay? And that's why I encourage every parent to spend all the time possible with them, because after they reach 14 years old, that's it.
They're in their room. They don't want nothing to do with you. They're
That's
on their
it.
phones.
Their character's already built. Their character,
I agree.
that's it. It's done. Okay, so the time, I'm going to spend time with it. No. That can probably be a possibility that you spend more time with them later on and stuff like that. But the time to develop them is at the early stage.
Yes.
So pour into them. That's why the Bible says, teach them young, right? Teach them when they're young. That's important. So you have to pour into them. And I say, look, your example is the most important thing. Because what's happening today in our society is that a lot of young people, their image, right? Look at this. God created us in his image, his character.
Yeah, we're doing
We
Genesis.
are drawn to imitating somebody. So this is...
If we're not pouring into him, who is?
Exactly. So
or what is, because AI and everything that's coming now. I mean,
exactly. So that's why we have to work harder, smarter, get closer to God, because they have to see the image. Now, you can talk you can talk as a Christian all you want, but action speaks louder.
How do you walk in?
Exactly. That's important because they're watching, they're seeing that.
Because I'm not a big, like, I read the Bible. There's certain verses I remember, but I can't really quote scripture.
No, it's
like
okay.
some
No,
people.
it's okay.
But
I'm
they
the same
say,
way too.
They say that, you know, if you can preach the gospel, and when you need to, use words. So it's just how you carry it, whether you open the door for somebody, whatever it is that is Christ-like, because that's what it means to be a Christian, right?
That's right.
Is that you're preaching the gospel.
That's right.
And
that's right. And that's important.
People see that light.
Yeah, that's important to do that because people need to see something different, right? Because if you're living the same way you're living from before you met Christ, what's the point? What's the point
You're
of
just checking a box off then,
right?
just to make yourself look good at that point, I think.
Yeah.
Some people are like, oh, yeah, I went to church.
That's it. So,
arguing with their wife in the parking lot and
Right.
going right back to the same stuff. And
yeah, and that's what's happening with society today. Society today, Christianity is becoming a brand. It's becoming a trend, which, you know, I was sharing this the other day on
there's a big
discussion.
movement on the younger folks, the younger
Absolutely.
generation now. Colleges, and I mean, I definitely want to get involved in that.
Beautiful. It's a wonderful moment.
Yeah.
I love what's happening. You know, we started a program here in our studio where I'm doing a boot camp for young people to come here.
Awesome.
Learn how to do content, learn how to serve the kingdom of heaven through content. And these young people are on fire for the Lord.
Yeah.
They want to serve. They want to, something is happening. But at the same time, a lot of people, and especially in my generation, I think the older generation, where there's this movement where people want to start using the name of God for marketing purposes or for, hey, you know, I'm a Christian now, do business with me.
Yeah.
Which again, again, it's not to judge the person, but once you start spending time with that person,
then you're held to a certain standard for the folks that don't know. So just like your pastor's held to a certain standard because he's the pastor, like he has to carry himself in that way. And so that we're doing the same thing. If we're claiming to be Christians and we're going to the beach and we have a Christian, you know, I go to Christ Fellowship, so you got the heart with the cross.
Right.
And if you got that sticker on your car, you can't be cutting people off in traffic.
Right.
You can't be.
I think that's why they put it on there. It's like, you know.
Well, you'd be surprised how many people are throwing fingers out the window that have the sticker. So that's, I mean, there was a guy that on Instagram. He's a pastor, and he was up there. He brought another gentleman up there that was really muscle bound, and he says, he's like, this is Jimmy. He's like, me and Jimmy go to the same gym. We both lift the same weights. We both, you know, eat the same food. We have the same plan. Right. We want to get big and we want to look good. And he says, he's like, the difference is between Jimmy and I is that when I leave the gym, I say, oh, I can eat that because I went to the gym today. But Jimmy says, I can't eat that because I went to the gym today. And the same thing he brought it back to faith. Is like, you know, I can't do that because I'm a Christian. Right. And, you know, and then the way that other folks look at it is like, oh, I went to church today, so I can do that. Yeah. And that's important because, you know, God's grace is not cheap. You know, it was paid. It was a very expensive price that Jesus paid on the cross for us. And I don't want to test it either. Yeah, and let me tell you, it's a beautiful thing, and the reason why Christ did it because we can't do it for ourselves. Yeah, and that's what makes God's grace, His mercy, so beautiful, and it's extended to all humanity, to everybody. Doesn't matter how far you've gone, it's extended to everybody. Mm-hmm. But the moment that I accept Christ into my life is a moment where now I work on myself through Christ. Yeah. Have a responsibility. Yeah, that's what the Bible says. Be imitators of Christ. So I'm very careful because some people are like, oh, well, I'm not perfect. We're not perfect. Well, it's not an excuse to continue living the way you're living. Exactly. You know, don't be careful with that. Yeah. Because you're planting in your mind that it's impossible. It is possible.
I haven't used drugs in years. You know, so is it possible? Yes, it's possible.
One
So
bad
again,
decision away.
exactly. Can I fall tomorrow? Yes. But that's why I got to get closer to God, and that's why I have to work on myself
It's a
every
daily
single day.
daily renewing of the mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for you, what would you say that moment was in your life where you saw yourself like, man, I am lost. I am just. What was that?
I would say there was a couple different times for me, but the first one was in my early 20s. I dropped out of high school, ended up getting my GED at the end of 11th grade, so I still had a pretty good education.
There you go.
And then, my mom told me, she's like, if there's anything you do, you need to get your GED. So I went ahead and got that like 2 weeks after I dropped out. I was working with my brother doing roofing, making like $400 a week.
Okay.
And I was, at that time, that's a lot of money
That's
for
pretty
a
good. I was gonna say, man, that's
almost
pretty good money.
18-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And didn't have any bills. So I was living the life. I didn't, I ended up, I would buy weed on Fridays and pretend like I was a drug dealer, but, monkey can't sell bananas.
Right.
And just got into the life of, just told myself I would never do cocaine. Ended up, getting drunk one night and doing cocaine, and it was off to the races from there.
Yeah.
So I had got really caught up from a young age, because I remember I told you I was in the juvenile program.
Yeah.
So the only thing that did for me was it didn't rehabilitate me at all. The only thing it did for me is it taught me about more drugs. And
Wow.
So when I got out, I was from 14, 15, 16. We would go to high school parties, and like these kids are like, oh, we're leaving, we're going home. And like I was one of those guys who was like, going home. Like, the party ain't stopping.
Do you feel like your identity was like affected by that? It was like, okay, now this is who I am.
I don't think I claimed it over myself. I just didn't know any different. And it wasn't like I was going home and talking to my parents about it or talking to anybody. All the people that I hung out with were in the same kind of realm. And that's what ends up happening. You hang out, you become a product of your environment, and that's what you stick around. Right. So it got to the point where I had got really strung out on drugs. And at that point in time in my early 20s, I always had a good job. I always made good money. At 18 years old, I got my first job doing construction, and I made more money than my mom made at 18 years old. She worked at the post office for 26 years, and I made more money than her at 18 years old. But I worked 7 days a week, a lot of overtime hours, and then I partied. When I even would go to work the next day, if I stayed up all night, I didn't care. I still went to work, and so that part of my life, I ended up, as a result of my usage, I ended up losing my job over it. I ran a skid steer, a little skid bobcat. I was grading a pond, and my foreman, he was an alcoholic. So by 10 o'clock every day, he's drinking beer. Jeez. So if to keep me from keeping my mouth shut, I'm drinking beer with him. I wasn't even, old enough to drink yet. So I ran this skid steer into the pond, and I told the guy, I'm like, look, we need to tell the boss man. I mean, it's not,
Right.
Well, we yanked the skid steer out. We set it on the side with the big excavator. And when they went to go, it was a rental machine. So when they went to go fire it up, there was water in the engine, and it blew 2 rods through the side of the motor. But I wanted to tell the boss man that day, but he didn't want to, because we were all drunk, at 12 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
And so I ended up getting unemployment over that. And I stayed home, and that made it even worse for me, because now I'm home. Now I'm getting money without even having to work. Oof. And I had just done things I told myself I would never do. I was doing opiates, Xanax, and I had just drugged myself to a real bottom. And at that point in time, my dad had 2 years clean in Narcotics Anonymous, and he lived in Fort Pierce. I lived in St. Cloud. I was like an hour and a half away.
Right.
And he would call me every once in a while. It seemed like it was like right when I was getting ready to do drugs or something, and he'd call me and just say, hey, how are you? And to check on me. And like, he was really doing good. He was already working the steps. He was doing really well. He's, for 45 years of being on drugs.
Right.
And
that's not easy, man. That's tough.
And I remember this night that I had gotten a large chunk of money. It was like $4,000 or something from unemployment. They gave me a couple of backed weeks of checks, and I blew like all that money. And within like a 4 or 5 day period,
all on drugs,
and drinking, and and I was down to just the last little bit of cocaine that I had, and I remember I was like crying, and I did it, you know, obviously,
Right.
and I was in tears, and that was the first like interaction that I had with God, because I prayed to Him that night, and I said that I was done, you know, and that the first time that I felt the presence, you know, and you know.
Well, what do you think took you? Because you know, looking back at your family, did you have any influence? Anyone that was a Christian or anyone that kind of like?
Not really. I
spoke
was
to you?
baptized Catholic. I always believed in God, but I never went to church or anything like that. I always believed in heaven and all
Right.
that, but I've never had I think that's what helped me, because like
Right.
some kids when they're growing up, it's like forced on them, but I never had that. So like and through working the 12 steps, like you're already pretending to be a Christian anyway. That kind of tricks you into believing in God.
Gotcha.
And it, you know, the good orderly direction, the great outdoors, you know, the 12-step fellowship. 12 steps came from the Bible in Matthew, the Beatitudes.
Right.
So AA was created with that, and then NA, the steps, you know, they just changed a couple of words, but it's
So
still
that's
the
where you
same
think
steps.
kind of like there was a seed in some way planted that you.
Because I went to my first AA meeting when I was like 13 years old.
Damn, man,
when
that's so young.
Yeah.
Man.
And I'm in
Jeez.
there at 13 getting my paper signed because I'm on probation with like all these old school like AA
Right.
people.
Yeah.
But so it was it was ingrained in me from a young age about faith and
Wow.
you know.
So no
brotherly.
mentor, no mentors, nobody in your life that said, "Hey,
No.
wow."
This point in my life, I was just at rock bottom. Like there was no other
Interesting.
place for me. And the first time I actually prayed to God, I was on my knees on the bedroom floor of my apartment, and in tears. And I ended up going to sleep that night or passing out, whatever happened. And the next morning, my dad was there. And he says, "Hey, Johnny, you want to come home?" And I went home. And like I said, I was on a bender for a few days. I didn't know what detoxing was at that point in time, but I was
tough. Yeah.
I just remember going home to their house, and I laid on the couch for like 3 days, and I just felt like I was sick. But I was coming off of benzodiazepines. I was coming off of opiates. I mean, we were doing like the Roxycontins and stuff, and
Damn, you went heavy.
yeah, and these are things I told myself I would never do. They were like non-negotiable things,
Right.
and it was just like became like whatever I could get my hands on, and but that was my first. I truly believe that the Holy Spirit had His hand in that whole situation, even though nobody in my life was Christian. Like I look back on a lot of things in my life, He spared me for a reason. He was always there when I needed Him. Even whenever I was getting in trouble or getting arrested, I remember having those foxhole prayers in the back of the cop car, like, "God, just get me out of this one, and I promise I won't do it again." And He got me out of it.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not a felon today. I should be in prison for years for the stuff that I've done, and just how He's spared me is it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So that's why I want to stay on the path, because that's what I'm here for.
It's interesting because now you're a witness to the God that you didn't know who He was, but He heard you loud and clear.
There was a presence in that room that night.
Absolutely. I believe that 100%. 100%.
And
100%.
people talk about that, and for me that was it.
Yeah.
I had that was the first kind of spiritual awakening and that I had in my life. But when you talk about, I obviously everything happened good from then on. I went home, I detoxed on the couch, and my dad asked me to go to a meeting with him, and I went to my first NA meeting at 21 years old, and I stayed clean till I was about 26. I met my
26. And then what happened in 26?
Well, that's I met my son's mother in recovery. She was in recovery also.
She was in recovery too.
Not my wife now, but Braden's mom.
Okay.
And I met her. We ended up moving in together, and I became a firefighter paramedic. I went back to school.
Oh,
I started my business. I had a lawn business for 10 years. I started at 21 years old. And everything was great. My son was born. I told his mother that I said, "Look, I'm going to go to school to be a firefighter now while he's young, so that way I have more time to spend with you guys once he gets older." So I was just like, kind of like, "Here, you handle him.
Yeah.
I'll work and take care of the bills and cut grass and then
awesome.
go to school." And I ended up getting a degree for fire and EMS, and became a firefighter paramedic. And at a time, that particular time was like right when the market crashed, the housing market. It was like
Oh, yeah,
07,
that's right, yeah.
08.
Yep.
So like there was no construction jobs. I was already in school to be it was construction tech is what it was. It was an associate's degree, and I switched over to firefighting because I worked in a drug rehab, and they were like, "Hey, if you go get your EMT license, you know, we'll pay you more money." So I was like, "Okay." And I went to get my EMT license. They said, "Oh, if you want to be an EMT, you got to go ride at the fire station." First time I rode at the fire station, I'm like, "This is what I want to do."
Wow.
And so became a firefighter paramedic. Ended up working for a smaller department first in the middle of the state, Wauchula, Hardy County.
Wow.
And then I chased, you know, it was a smaller. Second day on the job, they were letting me drive the fire truck. Like, it was just
This is
good
like,
old
yeah,
boy.
yeah.
Like, here you go. Like, here's the key to the tanker. You know, you're a released
the
medic
siren
after
and
like
everything.
after a week. You're by yourself on the ambulance. You're like, all right, you know, this lady's having a heart attack. What are we doing? I'm like, I just got out of school. What do you want me to do? Like, I'm calling a
No
helicopter to
way.
come pick this lady up. It's 45 minutes from the nearest hospital.
Wow.
But I learned real quick.
That's
and
awesome.
It was in that department, because it was so small, it was like 634 square miles. And, you know, and there was only 3 stations. So if you had an accident, then normally there were pretty bad accidents on those old county roads. You know, you already had 2 choppers on the way, and you're thinking like, you know, severe trauma and all that stuff. So I learned a lot really quick, and I ended up chasing money because, you know, I wanted to get paid more. I went to City of Seminole in Pinellas County, became a firefighter over there, and almost 5 years I was there. And then my dad got cancer, and he was living back over here in Port St. Lucie and Fort Pierce, and I was driving back and forth, taking care of him. Like, look, let's just move back. I don't want to miss out on this time with him. I wanted my son to spend more time with him because my son was real young at the time.
Yeah.
So we bought a house in Fort Pierce, and I ended up getting I still worked over there for about a year. Ended up getting moved. Got hired at Indian River County Fire Rescue, and a lot of people don't know this, but at that time, you know, me and his mother started using again together, and a lot of people.
What do you think took that? What do you think took you to that?
One day, so in the fire service, and I don't know if it's everybody that's like that, but in my experience working in the fire service, a lot of people don't know how to deal with their feelings. And they don't know how to communicate that, like, you know, we would go on a serious call of like a dead 18-month-old baby that we worked for 45 minutes and come back to the station and eat dinner and everybody's laughing. Yeah. And it's like, you know, I think my generation was the beginning of changing that, because like you got these old school guys like, oh, why are you wearing your mask? You don't need that. It's like, well, I don't want to get cancer and die 10 years after I retire.
Right.
You know, and like you just, and I want to take care of my spiritual wellness instead of going home and drinking for 2 days and coming back hungover, shaking on my 24 hours a shift. So, you know, I think it had a play in it, because when I worked in Pinellas, I mean, there was just a lot of stuff, man. Death became normal. Like, it was, you become desensitized to life. Wow. I wasn't connected. I wasn't talking to in the meetings anymore. At that point in time, that was my faith, was going to 12-step. And I walked into a store one day, and I remember saying this to myself. It was almost like it was a trigger for me, because the beer Bud Light Platinum came out while I was clean. And I was like, man, I never drank Bud Light Platinum. And I remember I was going fishing. I looked over at the store and I saw the Bud Light Platinum, and I said, I just decided to go buy a 6-pack. Wow. And that was, you know, that was the beginning of dragging across the bottom for me. You know, like I said, it doesn't happen overnight. It's like, I'll just drink on weekends.
It's gradually,
I'll just drink on Saturday, and then you're drinking on Wednesday, and then next thing you know, my dope man's phone number's in the bottom of my beer.
It's interesting because I was having a conversation yesterday about this. You know, I love studying the mind. I love studying about psychology and everything, and especially when you're doing content, marketing and all that stuff. And it's interesting how a lot of people don't notice what they feed themselves and what they're watching. So sin doesn't just happen immediately. It doesn't just boom, I just fell on this person, or this girl just got pregnant just like that,
Right.
or whatever the case is, right? Um,
It's a
it happens
process.
gradually, right? It's something that you watch, something that you see. It's the environment you put yourself in, and little by little, it just starts chipping at you. And it's the conversation yesterday was about Inception, right? The movie Inception. If you watch the movie Inception, it's with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yep.
It's the idea of implanting an idea in your mind without you even noticing. And that's what marketing does. And that's what Budweiser, all these commercials, that's what they do. You know, you think you're not paying attention, but you're watching these things, and little by little, just staying there. It's getting implanted. And then when you get that feeling, the first thing you're going to think about is, well, I have a way to deal with this feeling I have. And you're going to go straight to Budweiser. So it's a strategy that's out there that a lot of people don't understand or even notice.
You think I was like hypnotized by the Bud Light Platinum
Hey,
or
man,
something.
it could be, yeah. in anything, it's everything. It's, you know, the more time you spend on watching something.
Yeah, no, it's
right?
it's true about all of our news feeds, our feeds that we have. Like whatever you like, it's gonna feed you more of.
Exactly.
And now I got YouTube TV and it's on my phone. So whatever I'm Googling on my phone is popping up on my TV at home now. And
exactly. So it's gradually, and it's important to talk about that, because sometimes we have to catch ourselves, and sometimes we have to admit to ourselves, you know what, I'm feeding this habit.
Yeah.
Let me stop it right now,
No,
because I know where it's going to lead, because I'm strong now.
Right.
I'm in the word. But the moment that I am weak,
that's when he attacks.
That's when it attacks.
Yeah.
And here's another way of looking at things. Sometimes we like to blame the enemy. The devil exists.
Yeah.
Okay? Satan exists. He's the deceiver of all things. But I cannot blame him. Okay? We tend to always blame him all the time. And this is where you go to Genesis. You look at the beginning of the fall of man, and you know God gives instructions to Adam and Eve to do a certain thing, and don't eat from the fruit. You know, and as soon as they do that, they disobey God. God comes into the presence of man, and each one of them. If you see Adam goes and says, you know, well, God, it was the woman that you created.
They were hiding.
Right? And then the woman goes, oh, no, it was the serpent.
Yep.
No one took accountability for what they did.
Yeah.
Each one of them blamed the other. And God did not give them even, there is no conversation after that. There isn't, oh, really? Okay, so it was my mistake. I never
looked at it like that.
You know? And that's the thing, and that's the human behavior. We're always trying to find
flesh.
Blame on somebody else.
Yeah.
But the reality is because I was feeding the idea. I'm the one that was feeding it. I'm the one that continued to entertain the idea. And then when the moment came of weakness, that's when I fell. And that's when we start finding ourselves, God, why? Why did you allow this to happen? Why am I going through this? Well,
yeah.
Rewind the tape.
Very true.
Rewind the tape. So that's why it's important for us to take accountability, be vulnerable, admit to your shortcomings, and come before God.
Take the thought captive.
Yeah, man. Just
early.
Yeah, just
because you already know, like, hey, like every time I'm scrolling, why am I seeing this pretty girl that I'm gonna like her picture, and then I'll be in trouble with my wife?
Exactly.
Delete.
It's there.
Delete.
Yeah.
There's no reason for that to even be there.
Exactly.
Get it out.
Exactly.
You know, and like you said, it's at those times where, you know, you're fighting with her and it's like, oh, well, I'll show her. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm going to go hang out with this girl that's, you know, been texting me on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah, and you always have to think to yourself, like this. And this is where we go back to what we were talking about, holding ourselves in a higher standard. For me, because we're doing this podcast, I'm sharing with you about my faith. I'm sharing with you that I am a man of God. Again, not putting myself above anybody, but I understand that I have a responsibility. The moment that I say this, I have a responsibility. So now I'm held with a higher standard, and that helps me. And the reason why is this. If after I talk about this, tomorrow you find out, damn, Roger's over there smoking crack and this and that, what does that do to the image of God? What does that do to my image? It taints it.
Especially to the most of the world, because they don't understand. I mean,
Right.
but I mean,
And that's why a lot of these, and this is why I'm very, again, when people start putting people on pedestals, right?
you put their pants on just like you do.
Exactly.
One
But
leg at a time.
they get surprised, especially when it's a pastor or a preacher, and you know, the guy has done wonderful things, and then this one mistake, and it's like, oh, look at him. He says he's a man of God, and he's done this. And it's like, well,
Yeah. What happened? It
That's
was a
the-
pastor like up in New York or something.
yeah, it's difficult, and that's why we have to have people around us to hold us accountable. That's why I always say, have someone that's around you that can check you.
We got the probably, I got 3 or 4 group chats on WhatsApp. There's I have a Bible study that I've been going to, and now I'm co-leading that I've been going to for 3 years. Every Monday night, there's a Bible study I was going to on Saturdays pretty regularly, and then there's 2. We've been doing spiritual retreats for the last couple of years, so we have a couple
awesome.
courageous men's retreat group chats, and I put on there like what I'm going through stuff, like, hey guys, I got this going on, like pray for me. You know what I mean? My sister's got cancer, like pray for me. And all these, I tell people that it's going to be hard for me to go back to my old life.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to have like people beating on my door wondering where I'm at if I don't show up on Monday night.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying that I'm good, but it's going to be hard for me to fall off the boat because I placed myself in the middle.
Exactly.
And sharing that stuff, like when you're going through it, like, hey guys, I'm dealing with this right now. I'm having lustful thoughts. I'm in the church and I'm taking this woman's clothes off in church.
Yeah.
3
Confront
seats
it.
away from me.
Yeah.
And then you're like, that happened to me last week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is how I was dealing with it.
Exactly.
You know, or I'm going through that too. Let's keep each other accountable.
Mm-hmm.
But if I don't voice it or say that, and it's teaching others to voice their issues that they're having too.
Exactly.
And like I said, man, that's what you need. Is you need fellowship of like-minded people. You need other strong, courageous men that are going to help get you off the bench when you're sitting over there and get you in the game.
That's
right.
And it's
that's
biblical. That's biblical, right? So the Bible says, confess your sins to one another.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. Because the moment you put it to light, and I have a friend, his name is Abner. He says something on my podcast, which, I loved what he said. And he said, the moment you put that issue to light, you bring it out to light, the devil cannot condemn you.
Yeah.
What are you going to condemn me about? He already knows.
Bro, I'm on LinkedIn, and I tell these people I used to smoke crack and do heroin, and I'm a business partner in a multi-million-dollar business.
What can you condemn me
And these
about?
people come to me, and they're like, man, where it says occupation,
Right.
I put man of God.
That's it.
And these people are like, man, I don't know how you do it. I'm like, do what?
Right.
Like, what,
What are you ashamed of?
You can't tell me anything about myself if I tell you everything already.
That's right.
There's like, if you're a politician or something, you tell her, why wouldn't they tell all the stuff, their dirty secrets in the past and get it out in the open? Like,
That's right.
When you're getting ready to get voted into office, they're like, yeah, this guy, dated a stripper back in the day.
Yeah. And there's power in that, and again, it's to the vulnerability. You open yourself up. It opens doors to people who really are going to take that and say, you know what, I was struggling with this, and now I have hope that I can get out of this.
Yeah.
I can deal with this. And that's the purpose. It's not for you to live in that. It's not for you to stay where you are, because it's going to destroy you.
Yeah.
The lifestyle will destroy you. But it's to see that and say, you know what, there is a way out. And this is where Jesus goes along with the story of the prostitute, where he goes and he confronts all those leaders, and they were going to stone her. But people need to understand that they were following the law. They weren't doing anything wrong in their eyes. They were basically fulfilling a law that was established saying that if you were caught in idolatry, you were stoned to death. Now, if you ever go on X, there is a video where there is a man, because in those regions, they still do those things.
Right.
And if you ever seen someone getting stoned, it's horrible.
Right.
It's a very bad way to die.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, and I saw that when I was 8 years old in Brazil live. So I know what it looks like when somebody's getting their heads bashed in to death.
Yeah, my wife's shown me some crazy videos.
Yeah. So I've seen it live. When you see Jesus coming into the picture and Jesus confronts those leaders, he goes and he does something very interesting. He goes and he writes something on the ground. The Bible says that each, from the eldest to the youngest, they started leaving. Right? Jesus asked them, you know, if there is no one here with no sin, throw the first stone. Cast the first stone. To the eldest to the youngest started leaving. They were like, they started reflecting on themselves. Said, who am I?
Yeah.
But then Jesus comes along, and this is what Jesus does with us. He saves us from our sin because the reality is we deserve death. That's a fact.
Yeah.
We deserve it. But Jesus comes along and says, I'm going to save you from your death, from the penalty of the law. I'm going to save you. But he says something to her very important. He goes and he says, look, where's your accusers? They're nowhere. Good. You have no one to condemn you anymore. I saved you. But go and sin no more. See, Jesus didn't
There's a
say,
lesson.
That's the lesson, right? So Jesus is not like, hey, you know, I saved you. Your
That's the
lifestyle's
way we
okay.
should look at it. That's the way we should see things in life.
Right? So he saves you, sin no more. He understands that there's going to be a process. There's going to be that struggle. But understand that I saved you from that.
For a reason.
Don't continue in that because you will suffer the consequences of those things.
Which is, I might not be here the next time they want to stone you.
Exactly.
So.
But, you know, there's a lot of lessons in there.
I never looked at it like that. The way you
Yeah.
broke it down definitely
Yeah,
was another perspective that I never saw.
Yeah. And
I almost hit preliminary saving, you know, prior to the actual.
But that's what it was,
crucifixion.
right? That's what it is. And that's where people need to understand that God's grace, Jesus' grace, is not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
It was paid with the expensive price.
Yeah.
And again, he did take our place for something that we deserved. And that's why the more I get closer with God, it's interesting, is I see how much more dirty I am. It's like, wow, man.
Well,
I feel
as I feel like I got something licked, then something else gets
something
revealed.
comes up. Yeah.
And then, or the same thing comes back that I licked like a year ago, or I call it that, but it's, it's an ongoing process. Like you said, there's no journey, there's no destination. It's a journey.
Yeah, it's a journey. It's an ongoing process.
As long as I don't look at it like I've arrived or, you know, or like I got this.
Right.
Then I'll be all right.
And that's important. That's important. And so you told me a little bit about your ministry. You have a ministry. You have a job. What are you doing now? What's your...
So now we're, the ministry portion was we're Braveheart inspired. It's a group of guys.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
Myself and 4 other guys. And we partnered up. It's community outreach.
Mm-hmm.
We have apparel. And we put on a free concert every year in the fall,
man.
in Port St. Lucie, free worship concert in the middle of the square in tradition. In Port
That's
St.
awesome,
Lucie.
man. That's old school right there.
And then we're the men's retreats that become part of Braveheart now. So
That's
there's
awesome,
3 years in a row now we've done the men's retreat. This will be the 4th year, and then I've been heading it off the last 2 years. And
how many men do you have right now that take part of it?
So the men's, it's whoever wants to go,
Right.
is how it is. But I mean, we can hold up to about 100 people at the retreat center. It's actually owned by a Brazilian church, and it's in Okeechobee.
Really?
Yeah, and that's what it was built for. Their church, you know.
Oh, what church is it?
Revival of the Nations.
It's a Brazilian church.
Brazilian church in Fort Pierce, and
Fort Pierce.
And I started my journey of going to church at a Brazilian church.
That's
too. It's
awesome, man. Yeah, I go to a Brazilian church. Yeah.
Church Family of God, and Pastor Arle. He's
Uh-huh.
actually I want to get on his podcast too, because he's got one, because
That's
they were my foundation. These people were, I've never seen the Lord move than in a group of Brazilian folks. I mean, they prayed. These people didn't even know me, and they were laying hands on me. And I truly believe that the prayer from them helped me to step out of my darkest days that second time.
Yeah. Well, I learned a lot. That's where my life changed in Brazil. So I lived in Brazil for 9 years, gave my life to God in Brazil. You know, met my wife there. So Brazil did change my life. Well, a lot of people don't know this, but Brazil is one of the largest spiritual country in the world.
It is.
So you have the largest group of Catholics, you got the largest group of Protestants, you have the largest group of
all of them.
Santeria, whatever you want.
Yeah.
Whenever it comes to like spiritual things, Brazil is.
Yeah, I heard there was like a movement in Rio with youth, and there was like 8 million people in the streets.
Huge.
Yeah, it was like the streets of Brazil were just filled. I mean, and there's only like 12 or something million in Rio but I mean, it was
it's awesome.
more than 2/3 of the population were out there.
It's awesome. You know, I learned a lot there and a lot of experience out there. So, yeah, it's been changing. It changed my life.
Yeah, when I first met my wife, I remember laying in bed, and I opened my eyes. 'Cause I'm American, full on, like, just American. And I opened my eye one night, and she's standing over me, praying. I didn't know she was praying at the time. I'm like, what's wrong with this lady? She got like a demon in her or something? But that's like is a normal thing to wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I guess, because that's where God is speaking to you more. I mean, that you talk about the beginning, the story said that was evening, and then there was so the beginning of the day is actually the evening.
Yeah, that's how. Yeah,
and so that was just a weird experience.
That's
and she was,
how powerful is that, man?
Man, her and she was singing in the church when I met her, and when I asked for a good Christian girl, I couldn't ask for a better one.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's where you protect it. You protect your home. Fellowship at home is important. Praying with your wife is so important, and that's what the society needs today.
Yeah,
and I think that's what's happening. Especially here in Miami, there's an awakening happening, and a lot of people are hungry for God, and they want to know more because they see that the lifestyle that they've been living has not gained anything. There is a certain feel of emptiness, right? But when you put God in the center of your life, man, it is so fulfilling. I can't see my life without it anymore. I just can't see my life without God. I just can't.
That's our biggest like pitch too. I mean, if you call it a pitch, is that that last year it was like real men pray, real men worship, real men. I forgot the third one, surrender.
Right.
And because it's the truth. We have to lead each other men to be. We're supposed to be this masculine. You're supposed to be. As men, we think we're only supposed to provide for the house because I'm paying the bills, because I'm doing this. My job's done. No, there's a lot more than that.
A lot more.
We need to be kingdom leaders of our house. We need to make our wives feel safe. We don't need to treat them like they're pieces of meat or like they're just
absolutely
supposed to wash dishes and that's it. Like, no, there's way more that a wife is a gift. A child is a gift. Yep. And that's why, and through the jail and prison ministry with Braveheart as well, that we're jumping in and grabbing these guys coming out of county jail. That's
so awesome, man.
And we have a group chat right now that I've been. That's what kind of motivated me to start writing, kind of a daily devotional.
That's good.
Is and just sharing my story with these guys daily. And when I tell you there's a movement, one of the guys, Marcavis, is he used to be a viral gangster rapper. Just came from gangs, has been in and out of jail and prison since he was 16, 17, and he's in his like early 20s, and he used to sing. When we went into the jail, they didn't have music, so he would sing for our worship before we started our service, and we called him the preacher because he always had a good a word, and this kid is just filled with the Spirit. And he came out and was coming to our church on a Sunday, and it just so happened that they were baptized in that Sunday. Amen. And he's like, they're putting people in the water. He ended up getting baptized that day. He's starting to create a following, and I'll share it too if you allow me. Because this guy right here,
please.
And then, so they're moving in the right direction. We got other guys that are getting reconnected with their families. There's probably 4 or 5 guys in this group chat right now. And then I got a call last week from another gentleman that has just gotten released from prison into the work release program. He called me and he's like, "Hey, Jonnie, just got out. This isn't my phone. I just want to let you guys know that I'm in the work release." And so all of us got together and we were like, where are you at? You know what I mean? We all got together. We got him a cell phone. We got him clothes.
That's awesome.
We just, showed these guys that you care, because a lot of people push this like, "Oh, I saved 400 people this year." Okay, they said the prayer with you. What else did you do? Right. Are you bringing them up, lifting them up, showing them, getting them connected? Because that's what our group of men is all about. Is like I said, getting people off the bench. If I didn't have this guy telling me, "Hey, Jonnie, you can lead this," I would have never thought I could lead it.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing how God, he took you to a point where I have no doubt whatsoever that God called you that night, wherever you were at that moment, where God called you for this moment. And this is where your purpose, right? You have your business, and this is, I share this all the time, and this is where I have, in my business, God is the artist, is our business is to build content. That's how we make money. That's how we
have to live in the world.
Right.
Got to pay bills.
But our mission, let me tell you this, our mission in reality is to present Christ to the world. That's it.
And that's where, even like you said, even in Miami and with certain groups of men, like they can identify better instead of the white picket fence pastor that's up there every Sunday. Yeah. They can identify better with the guy that it's been where they've been, that walked where they walked, done what they've done, and say, "Hey, look, if he can do it, I can do it." Exactly. And so that's how I kind of he uses people like us. He uses Absolutely. Us to for his purpose, and it's all throughout the Bible.
And that's the thing, is purpose. You said it right. Purpose. The moment you understand that and you embrace that, don't let nothing get in the way. That's your purpose. And continue building that relationship with God, asking for wisdom, asking for direction, humbling yourself before God. Because the moment that you take on that type of work, and I'm going to tell you, Jonnie, right now, you're going to be on my prayer list. I'm going to be praying for you, and whatever we can do to uplift that ministry.
Yes, sir.
Let me know. But it's very important to understand that we are at war.
Yeah.
Not with each other, not with flesh, but with the principalities of this world, things that we cannot see. And there will be many attacks, like you said. But when we have God on our side, and when we have God at the center, nothing can stop the mission.
Nothing's impossible.
Nothing is going to stop it. So that's where we need to humble ourselves, because now we put ourselves in a different category, right? We are disciples of Jesus. And that's the good responsibility. And I was sharing that because I was sharing that with somebody that just got baptized. And I said, look, when you get baptized, it's not just you're dumping yourself in the water. There's a lot of meaning into that. You're going into a marriage.
Yeah.
You are claiming now that you believe in the resurrection. You are accepting the resurrection. You have accepted that you have died publicly. You have died to the world, and now you are a new creature in Christ Jesus. But you're also a disciple of Jesus. That's a huge responsibility. So don't just be that person that sits in the pew and just says, "I'm a Christian." Live it.
Yeah. Carry it on to the next one. That's what he wants.
Carry it on and share it. Share your story. Don't be ashamed of your past. Don't be ashamed of, what you're dealing with. Open up and share that Jesus is alive, that you have been transformed by God.
Well, that's the like you said, that's the beauty of content, social media, the world today, right? As it's a double-edged sword. It can help and it can hurt. But if you use that platform for good, You know, I had a guy say something to me that last week. He says, "Oh, well, what if I don't have a story like you?" I'm like, "Well,"
Good one, yeah.
I said, "Everybody has a story.
Everyone.
Everybody has something that they've overcome in their life that if they have enough urge to share it, whether it's with another person or through social media, because you'd be surprised how many people that you think, you know,
Yeah.
I never knew that all these people got out of it what they got out of it whenever I
Right.
share my story. So now it's like to anybody that'll listen.
Absolutely.
You know?
And it's important to understand that because everyone's story is unique. And I always, when I do the podcast coaching with certain people, they hear my story. They're like, man, I don't have such an interesting story like yours. And I said, Jesus called 12 disciples. Each one of them were different. Each one. Every person has their own unique story. My story, for example, the drug addict, the gangs, all the stuff, I can make a list of things. For certain people, it's not going to attract them. They're going to be like, I don't know what that is. I've never been drawn to drugs. I've never done drugs before. I was never a weak-minded person to do drugs. Your story doesn't really attract me. Is it beautiful? Yeah, it's beautiful. Whatever, you got changed, but it doesn't do anything for me. So that's why the other person's story of, hey, you know what? I was raised in a good home, or, you know, I never did drugs, and, you know, I went to school, I did that, and, you know, I changed my life this way and this. Oh, you know what? His story is interesting. That's why you have to tell it, because there's going to be certain people that are not going to be attracted to my story.
The thing is that, but your story, even though that part of it, it doesn't mean if you tell your whole story, right? Because everybody has something for everybody. So there's, obviously I'm a drug addict, but you know, I had a problem with food. I had a problem with lust. I had a problem with, so, and that's what it does. What it comes down to, why I say like working the 12 steps would help the world, because everybody has something that they deal with that is affecting them.
Yeah.
And no matter what it is, if you know, whether they want to admit it or not, everybody, you know, I call my wife, I call it plastic surgery, cutting up the credit cards,
Right.
because she likes to spend money. She likes to go. I'm like, honey, you got to tell me when you're using the credit card. I'm the one paying the bills. I didn't know it was ran up this high. So like, give me that thing.
Where are you? It's like she has that faith that, hey, the money's gonna be there.
Whatever it is, like somebody has something, and like with what I'm just now launching is my brand, which is kind of how my walk has gotten the discipline, right? You talked about discipline in the beginning. Discipline is the beginning.
Absolutely.
Me. Having discipline to be able to say, no, I'm doing this, and I'm not doing that anymore.
Right.
And for me, it started with my faith, you know, and I got 5 disciplines that I work on a daily basis: faith, family, focused, finances, and I can't remember the last one. We'll have to.
I want you to send me that though.
I have it, and
I want you to send me that.
I'm launching faith, family, focus, finances, and that's it. It's only 4.
It's 4?
Yeah.
Well, if there's a 5th one there,
Yeah.
we'll probably add that one in there.
But on a daily basis, the faith is number 1 for me. Fitness and focus, obviously, remaining focused on my goals, my
vision,
clarity that vision. I have, and I had the fitness came later for me. It was I was overweight, and as soon as I stopped doing drugs, all I wanted to do was eat.
I saw a photo of yours.
And so that became something new for me that I never thought that I wanted to be a fitness coach or anything like that, but it's something that people are asking me, like, hey, how'd you do that? Well, good. My time is precious. I can't just go tell everybody how to do it. So we're kind of building a platform for that.
That's awesome.
Writing a book right now. I told you I was doing the daily devotional, and possibly, you know, somebody, they were like, you know, you got to tell your story. When I was in jail, there's a gentleman, Donald Nally, that he just wrote his story, put it in a book, sent it to all the jails and prisons across the whole United States.
Awesome.
And he was local. He ended up coming in there and telling his story, and like him and I are, you know, like best friends now. and he's the one that was like telling me like, dude, you got to put your story out there for these guys.
Man.
And
for him.
and it's always been on my heart, but now I'm actually doing it.
Beautiful,
so that's
man.
where the discipline comes in for me, was to start doing the things that you always said you wanted to do. And I don't know if it was because of fear that I didn't want to do it, or just procrastinating. But all those things that I said I wanted to do, I'm either working on them or I've accomplished them. So
well, I think there was what was established was purpose. Now you're a man of God. You're maturing. So it's like that vessel is being prepared for what is coming. And a lot of people sometimes get frustrated. It's like, oh, I could have done that 20 years ago. You weren't ready for that.
no,
You didn't even have purpose then.
yeah,
This is your moment now. So don't base your experience on other people's experience. Oh, that person started when he was 20 years old and I'm, 40, and how am I going to do it now? It's like, because your time is not now.
yeah,
You were stubborn, and you had to learn how to trust God. And everyone has their time, because either you're stubborn and you're just being hard on yourself and you just don't want to let go, and that's the story, not to get into too much details, but that's the story of Israel. When God took them out of Egypt, they could have gotten there in months, but it took them 40 years.
yeah.
40
That's
years.
my story.
That's the thing, right?
I've been there in 2 weeks, but I waited till I was 30 to start.
Exactly. So that's the thing, though, right? Because God had to, because there's a lot of things that they had to let go of, and they couldn't get into the promised land with all that junk.
No.
And that's the thing. God will make you wander the desert for years if he has to, until you let go of what's stopping you to enter the promised land.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So you have to just understand that it was all on you. And this is your time now. So embrace it, accept it, get closer to God, and just let God do his work. So Jonnie, the last thing, did you tell me, so your business is basically personal training, personal coaching?
That's just now getting going. And that's like I said, the 5 disciplines of fitness, the faith, finance, focus, and family.
That's awesome, man.
So
super important.
Just launching that, I literally, like I said, I never thought it was something that I wanted to do, and building a personal brand is kind of the way of the world nowadays.
Absolutely.
And so I'm jumping on board with that, but I also, started a land development company with my business partner, Adam, so we do land development in Port St. Lucie.
That's
it's
awesome,
a community
man.
I grew up on, and I get the opportunity to help it grow and develop it. And that has just absolutely been blown out of the water. I started out as an estimator project manager with this fella, and he saw in me what, he invested in me, and basically said, here,
That's
let's
awesome,
go make
man.
money.
Yeah, I have a good friend that's living out there, which I think I'm going to try to connect you.
Okay.
Have him connect with you, and want him to get closer to God. And he has a AC company.
Okay.
Well, he does. He teaches people how to do AC and stuff like that.
Okay.
Which phenomenal person.
I took AC and refrigeration when I was in college. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a huge business, man.
I just
Huge business.
What was it? Oh, I was smoking weed in there too.
Well, that's another thing. I think he still does, but
Yeah. But
maybe he needs kind of.
and then my wife has she's got the cleaning business.
Awesome.
So I helped her when I first met her. She couldn't even speak English.
Wow.
We spoke through text and through Google Translate.
Look at that.
And
Where's she from?
She's from Brazil.
Oh, she's from Brazil.
Yeah.
Hey, man, we gotta hook up, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
my wife is Brazilian, so
Yeah.
man.
There's a few people we hang out with because like the husband's American and we talk English together, and then the wives do the wife thing.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
But so she got her business started after about a year of us being together, and she's absolutely just grown that thing into, she's got 2 crews on the road, getting
That's
ready to put a
awesome.
3rd crew on the
There you
road,
go.
Airbnbs, and that's a thing for Brazilian women.
Yeah.
When they,
Yes.
cleaning.
First thing, they
Yeah.
get into the cleaning and stuff like that. But I always tell them, make it into a business. You know, don't get stuck on.
She was like coming home from work crying, telling me the lady was yelling at her.
Yeah, I know it's tough.
And I was like, well, just start your own. You know,
Yeah.
how do I do it? So I helped her with that
There
part.
you
But
go.
after, you know, she handles everything now.
That's
And
awesome, man.
so
Congrats
that's
on her.
one of the businesses that I have going on right now is with her. So
Awesome. So they need anyone in Port St. Lucie need cleaning, all that stuff. Reach out to your wife,
yeah,
right, to her business.
she's
Awesome, man.
she's killing it.
Awesome, man. So where can people find you, Jonnie?
So I'm on all the platforms. I kind of started on TikTok. I'd say, shoot, almost 3 years ago, and all I did was get on there every single day, and I wasn't like being intentional or trying to monetize it or anything. It was just I got on there and I just gave a message. Wasn't really like a Christian message or just a life message, right? Daily. It was like a minute or 2 minutes long.
Yeah.
And was off of there for a while and just opened it one day. I was like, man, there's 15,000 followers.
That's awesome.
Same thing
man.
with YouTube, where I
Just be real,
just put
man.
the same videos on there, and
Yep.
like there's 25,000 views on all these. Like, didn't even know it was a thing. Just opened it up like 6 months ago, and I'm like, man, maybe I got something here.
That's right. You do got
and,
something.
and so obviously I've been on Facebook and Instagram and all of those for years, but
Awesome.
and
So what are the handles?
so Jonnie Parsons is the handles for Facebook, and Jonnie Parsons 1986 for YouTube. I can get links for you too.
Yeah.
But and then Johnny Boy 1986, which I'm
Awesome.
working on changing that. To Johnny Boy was like my childhood. You know, it's been my email address since I was a kid,
That's
so it just
awesome,
stuck
man.
as a username. And
Oh,
somebody's like, "Hey, you're a man now. Why don't you change that?" And I'm like, "I'm trying. I'm working on
Yeah,
it."
working on it.
Instagram's not being too.
yeah.
I guess because I got the blue check mark, they wouldn't let me change
Yeah,
it.
you got to take it off.
Yeah.
you gotta
So
take it
I
off.
learned after about a month of waiting on them to get back to me. So
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
YouTube, I'll give you the links.
Yeah. Pass me the
But-
links, and then just
And
so
then
we can make sure.
I
people
already
follow.
started following your podcast too, the
Appreciate it, man.
Act, and then all your other pages, especially for creative here, and
Yeah,
definitely
awesome,
you
man.
got something going here that's pretty awesome too.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it, Jonnie. Jonnie, once again, man, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You know, it's always good to have this conversation, always talking about God, talking about business. You know, I rejoice because you're a transformed person. God is working in your life, man. And I pray that God continues to bless you, to use you, and that God blesses your family, especially your son too, that you're spending that
Yes, sir.
that important time with him, and that he becomes an instrument for the Lord as well.
Yeah,
So,
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
And I'll definitely. You ever want to have me back? I'll come back.
oh,
and
absolutely,
then,
man.
You know,
Listen, when we
if
have
you're-
these
if you're
things,
in that area, I'll try to get you hooked up with the guys up there for
yeah, man,
you know.
got to build a studio out there.
That's what it's the
Let's
plan.
talk more about that.
Definitely.
You know, create a hub over there. But once again, man, we're going to be doing a lot more work. Anyone that wants to serve the kingdom of heaven and whatever we can do, that's what we're here for.
Awesome.
So I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
All right, man.
Thank you.
God bless, man.